Welcome, family, friends, and fans, to another episode of Action Martial Arts Magazine TV. I am Ross Greenberg, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, KJ Kordick. And today in the studio, we are blessed to have the award-winning Ric Meyers. Ric, welcome to the studio.
Hello, everybody.
Chime in. I'm super excited.
Yeah,
I've been trying to do Ric for 7 years now.
Well, you should have told me.
I just had to throw that in.
KJ, I would have let you done me years ago if you told me you were trying to do me all those times.
Right. Ross is
now
trying
I
to
know.
change
Now
my
I find
terminology with that one. Well, touche, Ross. You got me on that one. So
I didn't say it. He said it. I didn't say it. But you see my point? Okay.
Anyway, let me just tell you, KJ, from here on in.
Thanks, Ric. Now you're like, I love you.
Anytime, KJ. You want to do me? Do me anytime. I'm right here.
I got to change my terminology because people don't realize as a woman, when I say that, it comes off to a man's head because they're all kind of like, ugh.
Oh, yeah, we're all men.
And as a woman, I'm not thinking like that. So it's just funny how many men's head go right into the gutter.
Not at all. You said
it. Just to put that to rest, I often have expressions I use because I'm going to be turning 60 this year. I use expressions that are rather old school. I use these retro expressions, yeah. And so when KJ says that, I razz her about it because people take it wrong today. But back in the day, people who did, news reporters, and back in the day, they'd say, "Oh, I'd love to get a chance to do you on my show. I'd love a chance to do you in my article." That "do you" was an expression that meant to interview you, to have you on the show.
Dude, we're well aware of that. I'm old. Yeah, I'm older than both of you, and I've been.
Well, it's funny because Sick used to be you were sick. Now it's like Ross is like, I'm sick. I'm like, hey, I know you're cool.
Don't even get us started on gay. Be that as it may. But look, I've been doing this professionally for more than 50 years now, and I've been in journalism, I've been in television, I've been everywhere. So yeah, I know.
Well, wasn't gay meant happy at one time? You were gay.
Yeah, the gay,
not what it means.
Just look it up on IMDb. You'll get all the gay divorcee, gay Paris, all this stuff. So anyway, let's not talk about that because I'm here. Let's only talk about me from here on in.
Yes, because you're the coolest. And speaking of stuff, you actually done work for Disney. You've done Comic Cons. You sell out. People don't even realize, like in the martial arts, at the big event, a lot of people don't realize that in Comic Cons, you sell out whole rooms. You have standing room people out the door to hear you speak, and it's quite impressive, actually.
Well, thank you. I just want to have fun. I know. As a writer with more than 75 books and scripts and other things like that, I know the end of the story. So I concentrate on the story, not the end, because the end is taken care of. So I'm just.
Why don't we go back to like you said, you when gay meant happy. Why don't you go back to that era and talk us how you progressed and all the work you've done and awards and a little bit synopsis for the audience who might not know you.
Oh well, okay. Basically. I was born of a schizophrenic mother and raised by a manic depressive mother. And so by the time I was aware, I had felt physical and mental pain. And thankfully, although my mothers were, as my father termed them, difficult, my father wasn't difficult. My father was very wise, very smart, and except he kept marrying. He worked in the mental health field, which is what always drove me crazy. When he was having his roast, when he was finished his career after decades and decades, and I was a speaker at his roast dinner, I said, my father's not the kind of man to bring his work home with him. He's the kind to marry it. And so he had 3 wives. Each one was clinically mentally ill in a different way. I was just going, how do you know? When the third one manifested her mental illness, and that was when I was in my 30s, we both got out to the lawn and we're just sort of shaking our heads, looking around, going, how did this happen again? And he goes, Ric, do you think it's a pattern? And I look at him and go, I think it's safe to say at this point, Pop, yes, it's a pattern.
Yeah.
But in any case, so I felt mental and physical pain, but because of my father's calming Mr. Spock-like logic, I was able to make a decision so many of my abused brethren weren't able to make. I was just talking to my Uber driver the other day. He apparently smelled it on me, and he started talking about his problems here, and I explained to break the cycle of abuse. So I made a decision at the age of, I guess, 7, maybe 9, that I was trying. My goal was not to be a writer. My goal was not to be a martial artist. My goal was to be happy. And whatever it was, and then I had to figure out what happiness was, because all my contemporaries were, drugs and drink and friends, and, they did all sorts of stuff to fit in, gambling, whatever. And I tried it all, but I was aware that was the moment really my martial arts, or I won't say martial arts, because martial arts to my mind is fists and fighting and muscles. My kung fu future was secured, because I realized that the thing that would keep me safe and happy was an open mind. My mind, if I kept an open mind, and later I found out open hands as well, and also open heart. Heart is power, hands is the channeling of that power, and mind is just the synthesis of all of it. It's the big boss. The first day that I went to a new junior high school, the bully said, fresh meat. And one bully came over to me and, blocked me in the hallway and said, "You're fat." And I just looked at him and went, "You're stupid." Because I knew I was fat at that time, because that's what I was dealing with to get over my abuse. I was eating because that was the only love I could really find. And to my amazement, the bully started crying because somehow I had tapped into his fear. And later that day, I saw another bully coming toward me, obviously that bully's boss bully. I was online for the bus. The other bully comes up to me, just looks at me, and then he does this, which to this day, I was, again, first year of junior high. He looks at me and then goes like this. He pulls back. And I was like, I've literally done that a couple of times. Whenever anybody tried to attack me, and it's only happened 3 times, that was the first time. I have been, in order to escape from my childhood, I've been seeing movies, I've been watching television, and of course I gravitate toward the detectives and the spies and the tough guys and the smart guys, James Bond, I loved all that stuff. And Sherlock Holmes, because he was smart. I realized being smart was better than being tough, because tough would just get you hurt again. I wanted to be smart. I wanted to avoid it. And we'll get into Bruce Lee in a moment. But anyway, he pulls back. And I've seen that on so many Westerns, and so many detective shows, and so many spy shows. And even on the detective shows, I just thought it was the stupidest thing. It's just dumb. You make a fist, which I also found out was dumb. When I put my fist through a window, because I was trying to get out of a room that was locked, and people, again, were trying to bully me, I found out what it felt like to hit something. And I said instantly, my open mind went, I don't want to do that again. That hurt. And guess what?
You put it through a window or a glass window?
Yeah, I put it through yeah. There was a door that I was locked behind, and they had glass in the window, and I was pounding on it and then went through, because even then I was able to channel my energy properly. But it cut me, and I felt what it felt like. And I said, don't want to do that again. That's just stupid. I mean, this is one of the most sensitive parts of your body. And what are the majority of martial arts trained to do? To make a fist and hit the hardest part of the body. And it was like, again, it wasn't logical to me. So this guy pulled... Fist
of Fury was born from.
And that's the other thing we're going to get into, which is the biggest problem with Kung Fu and martial arts is the translation. In other words, fist in China doesn't mean this. We translated it to this, because that's the fist we knew.
What does it mean in China?
In China, it means the core, the center. And also,
the chi center?
Yeah, they don't use the word fist. It's translated by us as fist. So we say,
interesting.
They're not in China. They're not saying I'm doing, Tai Chi fist. They're saying the Chinese word for it, which, as you'll see if you see movies like Hero and others, Chinese is very poetic and can be translated. Personally, when I was doing Films of Fury, the Kung Fu movie, the documentary, we found at least 6 translations of the word Kung Fu, and the translation that suited us was human achievement. I mean, I've talked to Jet Li, and Jet Li, he says that it means concerted effort toward a specific goal. But again, that's how poetic and malleable Chinese is. And for years, the Tai Chi people were trying to teach, where your Dantian is, because that was one of the several sources of power that you could call upon. And we read all these books that were translated into English. And in English, they translated Dantian as the hips. It is not the hips. And if you use the hips as the center thing, it won't work. But anyway, I was going to talk about this later, but let's talk about this now. The thing is, in China, they had been developing their Kung Fu, their family Kung Fu, for many generations. Again, this is all research I've done on my 4 books on martial arts movies. 3 books on martial arts movies, 1 book on Kung Fu films, because I separate martial arts and Kung Fu. Martial arts is one thing. Kung Fu is at least 6.
Right.
Be that as it may. But anyway, so what happened, what I found that happened, because I was there, is that in 1973, Bruce Lee explodes into America. One problem. He's been dead for 2 months. He's been dead for like 6 weeks. So when he explodes in America, he's no longer there to go, no, you're not doing it right. No, it just, and all these kids and all these adults and all these people see his movies and go just like me. Not like me. Actually, I didn't do it for him. I did it for Jackie Chan. Bruce Lee didn't speak to me because, again, Bruce Lee was punching. So they all go in search of the thing that Bruce Lee is doing. And what do they find? They found judo, they find karate, they find taekwondo. There are more taekwondo schools than any other kind of school in America. And they go in and go, ha, and they say, you want to learn taekwondo? You want to learn judo? You want to learn karate? And they go, no, I want to learn that stuff that Bruce Lee is doing. And again, I've always said that all martial arts and all Kung Fu are the same. Human body, human mind, the world around them. The rest is money and ego. So what happens in China and in Japan and in Thailand and other places that discover Kung Fu, because Kung Fu was first, they say, oh yeah, that's all very interesting, that healing stuff, really interesting, but show me how you broke that board again. And then they come and they, again, and then in what happens once it gets outside of the family, because originally it was all being done within the families, within the dynasties in China. Once it gets outside of the family, then they want to know how to feel powerful. And also the students and the children and the relatives of the originator want to make a living at it. And so to make a living at it, they start teaching it. And again, it seems the majority of the paying students want to be badass. They don't want to be good ass. They don't want to be great ass. They don't want to be smart ass. They don't want to be wise ass. They want to be badass. And that means they say, no, don't teach us that. Teach us how to do. And this is what I ran into when I discovered Jackie Chan, not Bruce Lee. When I discovered Jackie Chan 5 years later in 1978, I did the same thing that all the Bruce Lee lovers did. I went in search of teach me what Jackie Chan is doing. And if you'll notice what Jackie Chan was doing in 1978 and from then on, and even up until today, he's trying to avoid being hit. That's the other thing that drove me crazy on these Westerns and cop shows and even now in the spy stuff and even in the Marvel stuff. People stand there and they wait for the punch to prove how tough they are, to prove how I can take it. I'm badass. And that's what happened. I digressed because originally when I started the story, the second bully came up to me. And the second bully came up to me and he cocked his fist, which again, just incredibly stupid. because that's telling me, okay, I'm planning to hit you. And I went, he didn't give me time, because later when the third person tried to hit me, I said, you're actually going to hit me? And so he's cocked his fist. And I'm just like, and then I heard about this later. I didn't hear about it then. I experienced it then, which opened my mind again. My mind was already kind of open. The door was slightly open, but this really opened up my mind. Everything went into slow motion. At the time, I was just like, I was just amazed. I was not expecting it. I had no idea what was going on. But everything literally went into slow motion. He started to punch me, and I'm just like, this is so cool. And the fist is coming at me, and I'm looking at the fist coming at me in slow motion. I'm not making this up. I can tell you other stories. And all I did was, rather than, I said, well, you know, my brain, which is a lot faster than many people give it credit for, is telling me, no, it's going, yeah, I don't want to be hit by this guy. All right, I won't get hit by this guy. And so I started to move. As he got closer to me, I started to move. I didn't jump back. I just moved as much as I had to. And the fist went here, and I kept moving. The fist went by me. And as the fist is going by me, I sort of go, I remember thinking, what do I want to do now? And then I left it up to my brain. That's why I'm always trust my brain. And as he goes by, I reached out with my other hand, which I think was this hand. And I just put my thumb on underneath his wrist and my forefinger on the front and just held on. And he kept going. As I got out of the way, he no longer had anybody to hit because I was out of motion. And he kept going. And I just kept holding on. And I kept following him. I didn't follow him with my feet. I followed him with my body, and then I moved my feet when I had to. And it wound up that he turned himself and me all the way around, and he wound up with his arm up his back with me holding on to his arm. Now, I could have sworn I was not, holding his arm really hard. I was just like this. Years later, jump ahead to 2001 when I discovered Tai Chi and Qigong in Taiwan, I realized, yeah, if my brain is in control, it wouldn't have surprised me in the slightest if he couldn't pull his hand away. I didn't think I was using any strength at all. I wasn't using any muscles. And he's back to there. But so I see his arm is up his back. And my brother did that to me once. He put my arm up my back. And I remember what that felt like too. That was also painful. So again, I wasn't thinking about it. I just went like this. Eat. That's all I did. I did. And his back is to me, and I see him go. I see him go. Wow! He didn't make a noise, but he reacted like, wow, that was painful. And then back, he turned around, and when he looked at me, I used this, by the way, later in a movie called Just Before Dawn, a slasher movie with Jeff Lieberman. I used this experience because when he turned to face me, he was fearful. He didn't know what happened. I didn't know what happened. I do remember that I looked at him like this.
Like the Matrix, it's just inside you.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, it's just to let my brain take over, and my brain is a lot smarter than me. And so now that's why my Kung Fu, I do the body mind. That's the other thing and also the calligraphy for my style of Kung Fu, which is called Don't Hurt Yourself. When I first created it, when I finished creating it, it was originally called Don't Hurt Me, because that's all I cared about. I didn't want to fight you, wasn't interested. Just don't hurt me. And again, open hands. This is my best technique. You seem upset. Can I buy you a beer? And you notice where my hands are. And you also notice, and you'll notice also if you see pictures of me with all the guys like Michael Jai White and Ty Mack and all these guys, they're all doing this for the camera, and I'm always doing this. It's like going, hello, say hello to my 10 little friends. So anyway, so that was at the very beginning of my life, very beginning of my conscious life, and movies and television, and I discovered that I wanted to be happy, and I let my brain let me know when it was happy. When I tried a cigarette, wasn't happy. When I tried drink, wasn't happy. years later, when I had cocaine on my finger at a Hollywood party, I just sort of went, yeah, I do not, because I see the way everybody else is acting. And I'm also not trying to fit in. And the reason I'm talking about this at length, because as far as I'm concerned, that's Kung Fu. The fighting and the being badass and making fists and hurting yourself, that's not, yes, that's definitely martial arts. But I've never been interested in martial arts because I'm not interested in hurting. I love Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee is my Kung Fu genius because he actually was a Kung Fu guy. But he hadn't lived long enough to make the transition like Jet Li had, and hopefully Donnie Yen will eventually, which is he was trying to prove something to his father and mother. And his father, Bruce Lee's father, took Tai Chi. Donnie Yen's mother is one of the great Tai Chi teachers. And they both reject it because they want to have the fights. They want to prove themselves by fighting other people, which is not something I'm ever interested in doing. I mean, basically, I strongly recommend anybody watching me now, if they're going, oh, that Rick is an a-hole, I'm going to show him when I see him next. I said, fine. If I don't recommend that because I'm not going to use my 10 friends. I'm going to use my 2 other friends, which is, well, actually, my 3 friendly numbers and my 7 other friendly numbers, and they're both the phone numbers to the local police and to my lawyer. Because I'm telling you now that more than likely, even if you attack me from behind, which also I don't recommend because that's not fair, if you do something to me, or if I'm not aware of it, and you don't, if you knock me down, I get up with the phone in my hand. Because I'm not going to get involved in this. And that's why I don't want to fight other people too. Because if I get into a fight with somebody, there's going to be cops. There's going to be lawyers. I got better things to do with my life. I have other books to write. I have other movies to be involved in. I mean, I'm doing my first audio book like next week for another person's book, which was these things happen to me. Anyway.
That's exciting.
Because I keep an open mind. So that's what got me started. And I was a voracious reader. I read at least 5 books a week, but all mysteries, classic mysteries, all science fiction, and that was the era of the greatest science fiction and the greatest mysteries ever. So when I got to high school, it was the time when everybody was rebelling against the Vietnam War. And so I was able to do things in high school that most kids couldn't get away with because the teachers were desperate for somebody who wanted to be taught, because everybody else wanted to, have sit-ins for better macaroni in the cafeteria. And I was telling my teachers, listen, I'll do the report you've asked, but can I write it as a short story rather than as a report? I'll include all the information you want, but I'll do it, entertaining science fiction and mysteries and shit like that. And they let me do it. And so then I was doing really great. I was working at movie theaters. I was working at theatrical places. I was at the Tony Award-winning Long Wharf Theater in New Haven as the head usher, as well as walk-ons and stage crew. But my father was desperate for me to go to college. And I was going, they're paying me at Long Wharf Theater for anything I go to college for, because just in case, just so you have a degree. So I went to college. It was a terrible waste of time. No, it wasn't a terrible waste of time. It was awesome. It was fun, but it wasn't helpful for my career. My second year of high school, I said, look, and I took a creative writing course, which I got an F in, because I got into conflict with the teacher, because the teacher wanted to be the god of the class. They're not in, and I found that in college as well. The teachers all wanted to have control over their students, because it's, the old saying, those who do, those who can't teach. I found that to be the case. And a lot of teachers I met, especially in the creative field, writing and acting and, all that sort of stuff, they wanted to have control over the students. And so I fought that teacher because he would make these unsubstantiated statements. And I'd call him on it. I said, that's your opinion. I have a little phrase now that I use, which is, because you may know I'm Kung Fu Santa. So I say, oh ho. And OHO stands for one human's opinion. OHO, one human's opinion. you have anything to say to me, I'm not going to fight you on that, because again,
I'm actually thinking that you've been in the fight or flight mode pretty much since you were born.
But not flight. Ever since I started learning Kung Fu, I found out the flaw of flight. I don't do flight, which is if you flight, you extend the conflict. I was taught by my first Kung Fu teacher, my first real Kung Fu teacher, that that's not something you want to do. If you get into conflict, you want to end it like that.
My point is that you came from a chaotic household with your dad was more the calming. You were bullied when you were younger, so you've been.
Well, they only did it once. They only bullied me once.
Oh, just once?
Yeah, once I did that thing to the guy's arm, the word went out.
Ooh.
This guy, he made this bully cry, and he caused this bully pain of his own creation. All I did was follow his lead, and then just did that. And it just happened to do his muscle. So so the bullying stopped immediately. And suddenly I had a bunch of people who were all going, "Hey, you want to do a play? Yeah, let's do a play. Yeah, let's do whatever. My best friend, who turned out to be a best-selling author as well as an Israeli agent and an Israeli paratrooper, we, as kids, we would run all over our little suburban town and work out these incredible detective and James Bond plots. And we learned how to do all the stunt fighting. Because that way we could fight without hurting. Well, sometimes we got hurt, but that was we would jump off ceilings, we would do flips, we would be able to do all this stuff. So we had all our cake and we ate it too. So anyway, the point was, in one of my colleges, they're building a set around me. It was a production of the Three Penny Opera. And the stage crew had to build a set around me because I had to come in at the end on a giant swan. So they're building it, and it's taking hours and hours and hours. So while they're building the set, one of the guys down here was working on the platform I was standing on. He said, I would tell stories. I would tell them stories, specifically the story of the end of the Elven race, which I still swear that someday I'm going to write as a novel. And the guy who was building the set looked up at me and said, "You got great stories. You should talk to my brother. He's starting a comic book company in New York." And I went, "Okay." And he gave me his brother's name, Jeff Rowan. I called Jeff. Jeff told me to come in. By that time, I had been writing and drawing my own comic books in my room, because again, to stay away from my mother. And I had 20, and they were all basically Jack Kirby 20-page fights. And my style is not tremendous, but it worked for me. And so I would bring in all my ideas, which included a kung fu guy, because this was 1973. So Bruce had just kind of made it. So we were creating. So I came into the office. Long story short, 5 weeks. Jeff kept inviting me back. Every week I would come back to the Atlas Comics Seaboard Periodicals office at the Columbia Steuben's Glass building in New York, and talk to Jeff and talk to all these people, because he was hiring and they were just building up the company. On the 5th week, I come in and Jeff goes, "Rick, this is Steve Mitchell. He's our new art director. Steve, this is Ric Meyers. He's our new assistant editor." And I went, "What?" That's the first I heard of it. And sure enough, I became the assistant editor of Atlas Comics Seaboard Periodicals. 50 years later, we have our 50th anniversary of Atlas Comics, and Mego has created an action figure of my kung fu character, Hands of the Dragon. You notice the title. This was back in 1974. You notice the title. It's not Fists of the Dragon. It's Hands of the Dragon. And if you see it, the figure, they're going to be sold exclusively at Walmart. And if you see them, and I can send you, I think I may have even sent you a picture.
Wait, so this is happening now?
Right now, 50 years later. This is another.
In Walmart, you can get an action figure of you?
They're a little late. They were supposed to come out in time for Christmas. Not of me, but of my character, of the Hands of the Dragon character. Oh, the character cool. I conceived and co-created. Because when you're doing comics, I never say I'm the creator, because it's a combination of the editor, the writer, and the artist. They're all different mediums that I've worked in. So yeah,
I can't wait. I'm going to look for that. I'm going to look for that as soon as it comes out. I'll blast it all over because that's.
There we go. He doesn't have. I can send you a picture you can put up during this. So you can cut into it. He doesn't have gloves. He doesn't have.
I found it already.
You got it already?
Yeah,
it's part of the pictures that I
send a link for you.
Yeah. So that got me started because of all sorts of issues we don't need to go into now. Atlas Comics didn't last long. So, but Jeff is a powerhouse. If you look up Jeff Rovin on Wikipedia or whatever, he's done amazing, awesome things, and he just does not stop working. So what happens is he'll write a book called The Pictorial History of Science Fiction Films, and then the publisher, it'll sell very well, and then the publisher says, we want another one, but he's busy doing other things, so he'll go to me, Rick, could write the sequel. So I wrote the sequel, which was the great science fiction films, and then he wrote the he did a fantasy film book, and they wanted a sequel of that, so he gave that to me. So I wrote the World of Fantasy Films. So that allowed me to meet all sorts of publishers. My father finds an ad in the local Westport News, which says, and I quote, I have it in one of my scrapbooks, "Ghostwriter wanted, no glory, lots of money."
No glory, lots of money.
I answered the ad, and it turned out to be the second biggest selling male action adventure series in the country, which was The Destroyer. And The Destroyer was turned to Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins, the movie, the abortive movie.
That's one of my favorite films. I watched that.
Well, that's too bad. I'll tell you what the co-creator of The Destroyer said after he saw, he had a screening. Dick Clark was one of the producers on that movie, and they had a screening for him, the creator of the character, and he walks out and he looks at Dick Clark and he said, you could have made Rambo, instead you made Dumbo. And that's the way I felt about it too, because even though the two writers, Warren Murphy and Richard Sapir, were great writers, they didn't know martial arts as well as I did, because by then I had started my search. I had not found real Kung Fu yet, but in order to find real Kung Fu, I went to karate schools, I went to judo schools, I went to taekwondo schools, I went to jiu-jitsu schools, and I would take as many classes as it took for me to find out that this is not what I want. And guess when I found out that I didn't want it? The moment they caused me pain. Again, what's my martial art called? Don't hurt me. And
but I still felt that the movie. Not to get into that, I'm not going to go into the whole thing yet.
See, we can do a whole series of interviews.
No.
Yeah,
but
go
just
ahead.
one film, just the whole Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins, the first one.
Yeah.
I felt the movie was good unto itself. It was a good movie.
It wasn't terrible.
It had a good message. The hero
But that came from the book. All that came from the book.
Yeah. And what I'm saying it goes from this cop who was kind of a crummy guy, and then evolves into becoming the hero.
Yeah, I wrote 3 of the novels. You don't have to tell me the plot.
Yeah. But that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to mansplain you that. What I'm trying to say is it had a good message. It was a good movie. Now, honestly, then there was the 2 sequels, and I wasn't thrilled. But I still like the character all the same.
Of course, the character is awesome. That's why they're hugely successful. That's why the series was the most successful, second most successful series in the world at that time. It wasn't from the movie, it was from the 20 books that preceded the movie. Actually, it was more than 20 books, because I wrote 25, 27, and 29. And also, ironically, speaking of comic books, the #1 best-selling series was The Executioner, which The Punisher is a dead-on ripoff of. It's just an incredible ripoff. When I was over at Marvel, and I only worked on the Hulk novels and the Hulk television show. I didn't do any of the Marvel comics, but I was often over at Marvel Comics because Atlas Comics.
David Banner, the original Hulk?
No, it wasn't the original Hulk. It was always Bruce Banner. The television show had David Banner.
Okay.
Yeah, because Bruce was a gay name. That's what the Hollywood
people
thought.
Wait, did gay mean gay back then, or was it gay mean
Yeah, if somebody's named Bruce, that means he's a little whatever back in the day.
Oh.
And you think it's sexist and racist now and homophobic now, You should have seen it back then. But in any case, yeah, literally they changed Bruce Banner's name to David Banner because Bruce connoted, limped wrists to them
That's
at that
interesting.
time. I could tell you stories because I've been at cocktail parties in Hollywood, and you think these people are bad. It's much, much worse behind the scenes. But anyway,
I learned VIP is not always the best thing.
Yeah. So I'm developing. These things are helping me develop. Bringing me toward kung fu. But in the meantime, the big change, speaking of comics, is that I go to work for Starlog because I did the fantasy film book. I did the science fiction film book. Then I wrote a book on my own on TV detectives because I didn't think TV detectives were getting enough credibility. All the critics were going, "Oh, these shows suck." So I wrote 2 award-winning books on TV detectives. So I had all these books, and I thought of all my books as steps. I would take my book and I put it on the side, and it would be a step for me to continue. And sure enough, I hear about this movie called Star Wars in 1979 or 77. And I'm at another college. The whole gang go to see the first show in New York. And we weren't able to get there on time because we had to take a train from Connecticut to the New York theater. We went to the second show. And we saw Star Wars, and I was like, whoa! And we go out, and we're amazed, and we're all talking, and we're all fighting, playing, and all this stuff on the street. And then we passed a newsstand, and I saw a magazine called Starlog, which had Star Wars on the cover. And I pick up the magazine, and I look inside, and I see the address of Starlog magazine, and it's down the street in New York. So I go home, I get my books, I go back into New York, I go into Starlog magazine, I just open the door, walk in, sit, put my books on the counter and say, "Hi, I wrote these. I'd like to work for you." Turns out, and the receptionist is like, and she goes, "Wait a minute." Goes into the publisher's office, brings out Carrie O'Quinn, the publisher of Starlog, and says, points to me and goes, "Tell him that," and points at Carrie. And I'm going, "I want to work for you guys." And he said, "Well, just so happens we're on print. We got to get published now. We're at the printer now. And Werner von Braun just died, the guy who created sort of the German and the American rocket technology. He just died, and he said, we need an obituary." And I said, "Now?" And he said, "No, you can take the day." Because if he had given me a typewriter, I would have done it right then. So I went home. I came back the next day. I gave him, I asked him the other thing that I do, which is true with martial arts and everything else, is I research. I don't walk in blind. I just sort of I know what publishers need because I've already been writing for magazines. I mean, I wrote for magazines. I wrote for comics. I wrote for fiction books. I wrote for nonfiction books. And so I know what these people go through. And what Warren Murphy was a great teacher, as was Jeff Rogan. Jeff taught me everything I needed to know about nonfiction. Warren taught me everything I needed to know about fiction. And basically he said, all publishers want is something that's publishable. That's all they want, And so I looked what they had to go through. So I know about deadlines. I knew about word counts. So I said to Carrie when he asked me to do the obit, "When do you need it? How many words?" He told me. I went home. I brought it in, put it down. He read it because it wasn't long. It was an obit. And he came out and gave me still probably the best compliment I've ever had for a nonfiction piece, which was, "You brought him back to life." And wow. I went, "Ooh." And I became assistant editor at Starlog. And one of the last things I did for Starlog was because I was involved with comic books, I got all the comic book stuff. So when not Warner Brothers, when the Salkind brothers, who were doing the Superman movie, needed a reporter, they got in touch with Starlog and said, "Could you send somebody over? We'd like to put him up for a month on the set of Superman." Guess who got that job? So they flew me over. I literally stayed at Pinewood because they were filming it in England. I was on the set of Superman for a month. I made friends with Christopher Reeve because because pretty much the rest of the cast didn't like him because he was so insecure. He was a novice, and so he sort of retreated into method acting, and everybody was just sort of rolling their eyes. I mean, Gene Hackman, Marlon Brando, all these guys are going, what an amateur. So he palled around with me because I gave him credibility, and also he was a great guy, and we had a lot of fun because Pinewood Studios was amazing. That's where they did the James Bond movies. I walked on, and they gave me, I could go anywhere. And I walked onto a set, and I didn't realize, I was like looking at it going, oh, this is an amazing set. It wasn't until a year later I realized it was a set from Alien. I was on the planet of the eggs. It was that set with the space jockey. And I was like, oh, wow. So in any case, again, I can't make I'm always a long story because so much has happened. So, in any case, I go see the movie. I go to the premiere of the movie, the screening of the movie. And when I was on the set at Pinewood, Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor did not have Ned Beatty's Otis. He had Peter Boyle playing another character, a big, hulking. It was a reunion of Young Frankenstein, because Peter Boyle was Young Frankenstein and Gene Hackman was the blind man in the Young Frankenstein movie. So here they had a little in-joke. So Lex Luthor's henchman was this big, hulking monster, played by the same guy who played the Frankenstein monster in Young Frankenstein. Except they went so far over schedule that they couldn't finish. Peter Boyle had to leave the set. So they replaced him at the last second with Ned Beatty. And they basically made up Ned Beatty's character as they went along. And unfortunately, unlike the rest of the movie, Ned Beatty's character, the Otis character, was cheap and easy. So I'm watching the movie. I'm expecting Peter Boyle. Here comes Otis. Here comes, and I love Ned Beatty. I think he's an amazing actor. But here he's playing a character because of my father's work in mental illness and mental retardation. I knew the person that Ned Beatty was playing did not exist. It was a complete fantasy cartoon character. It was because all over the Pinewood Studios, Richard Donner had these huge banners saying verisimilitude. So, everything had to be accurate except for Otis. And I was so pissed. I was so excited about the Batman TV show. And when it shows up on television, I'm like going, what the F is this? So after seeing Superman, I walk down to Marvel Comics because I didn't want to go to DC. And I sit in Marvel Comics, and one of my best friends, because he also worked at Atlas, was Larry Hama, who created the G.I. Joe world, and also a great martial artist. Larry did all the Japanese martial arts, so we got along because I was leaning toward, well, I wasn't leaning toward anything at that point. I was don't hurt me. And he was all about the guns and the swords and all this stuff. So I'm at his office in Marvel, and I'm going, why do they always have to ruin the movies, comic book movies? Why can't they play it straight? And he said, you come with me. At this point, Larry had already introduced me to sushi. There was only one sushi restaurant in New York at that time, and he brought me to that. At that moment, we literally got up from his office, went down to, Greenwich Village, and there was a theater which was showing a double feature of Baby Cart in the Land of Demons and Not Shogun Assassin, Lightning Swords of Death, which were two movies from the Lone Wolf and Cub series, which was, the guy with the baby cart and the child. And I was like, I had seen Seven Samurai, but nothing like Lightning Swords of Death. And still, Baby Cart in the Land of Demons is my favorite samurai movie. And I just went, oh, this was a comic book come to life. Literally, because, of course, those movies were based on Japanese manga, which I was not as aware of. But they did them realistically and authentically without turning them into cheap stupidity. And I said, oh, my God, that's a comic book come to life. And literally, again, we had just seen a double feature. It was like late in the afternoon, early evening at this point. And Larry goes, we're not done. And we walk from Greenwich Village down to New York's Chinatown. New York's Chinatown, which I was not aware of, had 6 movie theaters in the environs of New York's Chinatown that only showed Hong Kong movies. All 6 of them showed 2 movies, a double feature every week, and they were all different movies because that's how many movies Hong Kong produced at that time. And we went to the Canal Street Cinema and we saw Goose Boxer, but the main show, the premiere, the American premiere, was a movie called Drunken Monkey in a Tiger's Eye, which is Drunken Master.
Yeah.
And I thought Lone Wolf and Cub was impressive. I was a Tex Avery cartoon. My eyes bulged this big. They popped out of my head. My jaw dropped to the floor.
Auga.
And again, me being me, and it was all real. I recognized Buster Keaton. I recognized Harold Lloyd. I recognized Charlie Chaplin. Because, by the way, I forgot to mention that. That was some of the first movies I ever saw. And whether people know it now or not, that's Kung Fu. That's martial arts. What those 3 brilliant silent comedians were doing was Kung Fu and martial arts. And that's why Jackie Chan worshipped them. But again, I also recognized in that movie that Jackie, throughout the movie, unlike Bruce, was not looking for a fight, was not trying to prove how tough he was not trying to cause himself pain. If you'll always remember those Bruce Lee scenes where he hits somebody, in a killing blow, they always have that shot of Bruce Lee's face going. And you can see that, yeah, there's power, but there's also pain. That was what's great about Chow Yun-Fat when he later became the Gun Fu guy. In other words, he always showed power and pain. Schwarzenegger, Stallone, all those guys always want to make it look like it's the easiest thing in the world to shoot a gun. It's the easiest thing in the world to mow down people. There's no effect on you whatsoever. Same thing with, Fast and the Furious. Car crashes, no problem. Punching people with your fist, no problem. Nobody even has a scratch. So in any case, not Jackie, not Bruce either, but Bruce was into causing pain and getting pain, sharing pain. La Ka Young, the greatest kung fu filmmaker of all time, 36 Chamber of Shaolin, et cetera, he worked with Bruce when they were both young actors, child actors, and he said Bruce was always into the fist and not the Chinese fist, the American fist. He was always.
A lot of people don't know Bruce was an actor before he became Bruce Lee.
Oh yeah, he was a child actor.
Yes.
And so be that as it may. So I saw Jackie Chan. I saw that Jackie was not trying to cause pain, especially to himself, and he was always trying to avoid the fight. And I said, yeah. But by then, I had all these books. And literally the next day, again, because I don't wait, because I can't sleep. And, I'm so excited. I went to, all my publishers were in the same area. My nonfiction book publishers, not my fiction book publishers. And I went in and go, and by the way, when you went to Canal Street Cinema or any of the Chinatown theaters, they always gave you a little sheet, a fact sheet. It was all in Chinese. There's one little section with English. But they had pictures and they had titles and all the stuff. And I brought in the sheets because I went and I got as many as I could. And I went into my publisher and I want to do one of these. I want my next book to be about these. And my publisher, I think this is almost like a quote. The publishers went, go ahead. And then they did a contract for $750. Because again, they're not going to pay me a lot of money. They don't know if this is going to work or not. But they know but they do know, and this is important about knowing your subject and walking a mile in their shoes. They do know that when I say I'm going to write a book, I'm going to write a book. And I'm going to finish it. And I'm going to give it to them ready to go. And sure enough, yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, name some of your books. Tell us a little bit, so the audience could maybe go look some up. Where can they get your books?
Well, you can look me up on. I've written under many different names, but you can do Ric Meyers at Amazon, and you'll see you'll see this book, Films of Fury, the Kung Fu movie book, and my original books were like great martial art movies from Jackie Chan to Bruce Lee and more. The one that I just got the contract for was called Martial Art Movies, and I was going to leave it at that. And the publisher said, "No, you need a subtitle." And so I said, something like "From Bruce Lee and Beyond." And they said, "No, it's got to have ninjas on it." because that was the era where ninjas had to be in everything. And I've run face first into ninjas. We'll get into ninjas in a second. So they called it From Bruce Lee to the Ninjas. And even then I said, it's not ninjas, it's ninja. Because ninja is also plural. I said, no, we're fine. Because again, and then I saw again what Americans do. Americans, we're not going to confuse our badasses. We're going to just put ninjas. So, and then later when they did the paperback version, because it was originally a hardcover, they switched them. Now the title was From Bruce Lee to the Ninjas, martial arts movies, because again they're doing what the teachers do. They're catering to the people with the money. Now, do
you dive into like your books? What are they about? I mean, obviously, they're
nonfiction books were all about genres that I loved. Not all about. I had to write 3 books to get started to prove that I could write these books. So those books were about TV superstars and movies on movies, and the other one was the Great Soap Opera Companion, because my publisher said, if you write it, we'll publish it and pay you. And I went, all right. But
that was a big thing. I mean, now, unfortunately, soap operas have died, but...
Well, everything dies. I did a book called For 1 Week Only, The World of Exploitation Films, because I wanted to glorify them, and those are all gone. Ever since Friday the 13th, those are gone, because now the major studios are doing exploitation movies. So the raison d'etre for exploitation movies, which was to do what the studios wouldn't do, is no longer, because the studios will do anything they have to at this point. Then, of course, I did The Destroyer. Now, the Destroyer books, Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins, was about martial arts, Sinan Ju, the sun source of all martial arts. I'm a researcher. I want to make sure I get things right. So I did a massive amount of research, and so I started on, and the main character, Chun, is Korean. So I did research on Korean martial arts, and I found out that the Korean martial art is the main one that everybody knows. That's not a Korean martial art. That's a Japanese martial art forced upon the Korean by the occupying Japanese. And the one that I thought was more effective, because the other thing I noticed is that there's a reason that Thailand has Thai boxing. There's a reason that Japan has jiu-jitsu and aikido. There's a reason that China has what it has, because it reflects the character of the people, because it's all the human body, the human mind, the world around it. But in Thailand, some of the kung fu that works in China is not going to be as effective in Thailand, because Thailand is a completely different mental experience to live there. Having known Tony Jaa from when he was doing the Ong Bak movies to when he was able to do the Fast and Furious movies, completely different world. Tony could not wait to get out of Thailand. And there's a reason that virtually every Thai martial art movie has a tragic ending, is because they cannot come up with a way to make it a happy ending, because that's not their experience. And there's a reason that the Thai martial art Thai boxing is the most brutal and violent, because that's reflecting their environment. So, I had to go deep under the Japanese occupation and deep under Taekwondo, which again, first of all, Taekwondo isn't even really a martial art. It's a sport. And it's a great sport, but it's not really effective as a defensive martial art or offensive martial art, because it has a fatal flaw, which is that iron leg, that cement leg. And that virtually everything extends off of that iron leg. And the Japanese knew what they were doing by forcing they went after. What I found out was who the occupying Japanese went after. In order to force Taekwondo onto the Korean people, they had to hunt down, and they did. They hunted down all the Taekwon teachers and students. Taekwon was what the actual Koreans were doing. And if you've ever seen Taekwon, then you'll go, that makes sense.
That is very interesting, history, because, people don't realize the occupation of what they would do,
No. I mean, when you look, the famous line, and we're living it now and will always live it, is those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And I wanted to create a shirt saying doomed to repeat it. Because the nature of being a human being is by the time you're ready to learn from the past and not repeat it, you die. And all the new people have to come up. Again, I'm a writer. I know the end of the story. So I don't worry about the end of the story. End of the story is taken care of. I don't worry about anything because, again, remember my kung fu is don't hurt me. So I'm going to try not to hurt myself. And worry hurts you. I always say, don't worry, plan, research, plan. So I don't do the history here. If I'm going to learn Korean history, I'm going to Korea. If I'm going to learn,
so you would actually go to the country.
Because that's the next thing.
That's even more exciting.
The next job I did, Warner Books, because I wrote The Destroyer. The Destroyer was like the Cadillac of action-adventure books. So all the other publishers said, okay, you were the first ghostwriter for The Destroyer. Could you do something for us? I said, what do you got? So Warner Books was doing, because Executioner and Destroyer were so successful, they did a whole line of what they called Men of Action books. And they originally hired me because I also did the Hulk book for Marvel, the Hulk novel, Cry of the Beast. They said, we're going to give you our crown, because all the other series they had were sort of like knockoffs of other things, but they also got the rights because it was Warner Books, so they were affiliated with Warner Brothers, the studio. Clint Eastwood said he was not going to do any more Dirty Harry movies. So they said, could we do books? And he said, yeah, well, I don't give a shit, go ahead. So they put me in charge of the of the Dirty Harry books. And again, not only were they impressed because they gave me the first one, and because they wanted to publish them like every month, and they didn't feel that I could do that. And I said I could do that, but they would hire other writers to supplement. I said, okay, if you insist. But then the second book came out, and they spelled Dirty Harry's name wrong. Callahan only had one L, just like Rick with a K. And it was like, and I said, and I came into the editor's office and said, this will not stand. How did this happen? Because I found out then that the publisher, like so many studio people and television executives, they don't care. I care. So I said, set me up a screening room and show me all the Dirty Harry movies, and I will take notes. So I wrote what is called a Bible for the series. So they were so impressed by that there was one other series of the 6 that they were doing for the Men of Action group, and that was called Ninja Master. And they came, and the editor sort of said, well, look, the first one is really terrible, but we really couldn't not publish it. But then we got the second one, and we can't publish this. And I said, well, that means it must be really bad, because you'll publish a book where Callahan's name is misspelled. And so they said, could you rewrite the second book? Don't change the cover, because the cover had already been finished. They were already on deadline. They said, could you write it in 6 weeks? And I went, I didn't say anything to them then. And again, it was called Mountain of Fear. And the cover was finished, so all the stuff on the back cover I couldn't change, and the illustration on the front cover I couldn't change. I didn't give a shit. I went home and I took all the Zatoichi the Blind Swordsman movies I saw, all the Baby Cart and the Land of Demons that I saw, and especially the Kirishiro Nomuri Son of Black Mass movies I saw, and Seven Samurai, and Blade of Fury, and all these other really wonderful samurai movies. And I started, the original Ninja Master book was a yellow-faced, it was a white face, actually it was a white character. It was, Brett Wallace, the Ninja Master. And it was Batman. It was a white rich guy who, became, Brett Wallace during the day, and at night he puts on the stupid outfit because that's not what the ninja are about, and the costume, and becomes the Ninja Master. And so I did the second one, and the second one was about how the first book was full of shit. The second novel was, his master, his ninja teacher from Japan comes to him and says, we're going to kill you if you don't stop this nonsense. Ninja are not supposed, ninjutsu means the art of invisibility. You don't put on the bat suit or the ninja suit. The ninja didn't have suits. One of the great legends of ninjas was a ninja is running away from the emperor's guy or the shogun's guy, and he runs into a group of old people, and the soldiers come up to it, and they can't find the ninja because he had turned into an old person. It was, in any case. So after that one, they gave me all the Ninja Masters, and I did so well with these cheap little Ninja Master books that they then gave me 2 tetralogies. These were major books with a print run of 250,000. And it's still my most successful. It was called, they gave me a tetralogy, which is 4 books. And I wrote 1 novel over 4 big, thick books. First one was called Year of the Ninja Master, where I examine and explore all the religions of the world. And the second was War of the Ninja Master, which is where he explores all the governments of the world. And what he discovers is that all governments and all religions work great until you put more than one person into them. Put more than one person in, you're going to get fucked. Because because that's the way humans are. So what was great about that is they gave me the covers were embossed. It was a promotional campaign. Again, 250,000 print run. I'm still getting fan letters from these things. Unfortunately, I couldn't use my own name because we had to use the name that was on the other books, which was Wade Barker. But at the end of the run, it was so successful for them. But by then, the ninjas are already gone out of fashion thanks to, Enter the Ninja. They gave me the name. The name is officially mine. They did a sign. But also they gave me enough money that I could go to Japan and that I could learn from ninja experts. And I also learned a very important thing. If you want to get the truth, do not go to a teacher whose income is based on what he's teaching. Just something. In other words, when I do Santa Claus now, and when I do Kung Fu teaching, I never charge. I never charge money for it. Because if I charge money for it, I'd have to teach the student what they wanted if I wanted to make a living. But here I just want to impart information. So I met a group of people, and what's wonderful about wonderful people, and specifically wonderful teachers, is that they want to because they know there are terrible teachers out there. They know there are bad people out there. So they always introduce you to more people like them who will tell you the truth. And so I got to do those ninja math, and I was able to do authentic. And again, I discovered that all martial arts and all Kung Fu are the same. It's not a matter of what you're taught. That's why there's a red belt in martial arts. There's no belts in Kung Fu. If there's belts in your system, that's because they want money from you. Anyway, the red belt is the idea of that I was the Kung Fu teacher in Kung Fu Panda. That's why the end of only Kung Fu Panda 1. Because there's no Kung Fu in Kung Fu Panda 2 or 4. There's Kung Fu in Kung Fu Panda 1 and Kung Fu Panda 3. No Kung Fu in Kung Fu. I said you might as well call it martial arts marsupial for all the actual Kung Fu you have in this movie. But at the end of the movie of Kung Fu Panda 1, that is authentic Kung Fu. Is what happens is he takes all this aggressive energy that is coming from the villain, it comes into his body, and Po returns it to the villain without using any of his own energy. It goes, and the guy goes out, and then he does something. You can always tell with a real Kung Fu teacher in a screening of Kung Fu Panda, because what Po does then, Kung Fu teachers recognize, which is after Po returns all the energy, and Tai Lung goes all the way across the room and crashes into a building and brings it down, Po does this. I know that feeling. I've seen it, and I've even experienced it.
Well, yeah, even in your childhood.
Well, in my childhood, but I didn't know it was that then. It wasn't until later that I realized, oh my God, that's what happened then. But I wasn't aware of it. but I knew. But that's the other great thing when I finally met all these wonderful kung fu, tai chi, qigong teachers. And again, how I know they're real kung fu teachers is they don't put a label. I'm teaching, they know what I want, which is they know I want to be healthy. I know I'm going to die. I want to be healthy until I do. I like what Andrew Weil says in his book, Healthy Aging. Stay as healthy as you can for as long as you can, and when you stop being healthy, get off stage. And again, since I was an actor, I also know that sort of shit. And that my dear friend, the amazing Kreskin, who just died just a couple of weeks ago, he also knew that, and we would talk about this stuff all the time because did he have an open mind. The stuff he could do with his open mind was just like, whoa, baby. It's like my Tai Chi and Qigong teachers are able to do physically. So that's what led me to write my first martial art movie book. But the other thing that was great about that was that my timing was perfect in that there was a Chinese company that wanted to break into the American videotape company that wanted to break into the American market, and there was a television station that wanted to break into broadcast. So it was World Northall wanted to put the Black Belt Theater drive-in movie syndicated series of films onto networks all over the English-speaking world, and not Tai Sang. Is it Tai Sang? I think. But anyway, there was another company in Ocean Shores. Ocean Shores in Hong Kong wanted to sell all their kung fu video tapes in America. And here I was, with all my old books going, I'm doing a book on these movies. And they went, they had an office, Ocean Shores had an office right across the street from Grand Central Station. And again, what do? I walk in with my books going, hi, I wrote these. I'm going to write a book on the stuff that you guys are trying to sell. And if I had a ring, they would have kissed it. I mean, if they would have fallen, and they did. They did basically fall to their knees. They did. They went, anything you want. Anything you want. And what I said was, I want to go to Hong Kong. They said, let's see what we can do. They gave me all their photos. They gave me all their information. At the end of the experience, and when they were stopping, they had 106 Shaw Brothers 35 millimeter reels. I went to work for the reboot of The Twilight Zone in 1985, and I was sent every single week to a different pop culture convention all around North America for like 9 months. And I promoted The Twilight Zone there, but also they let me take 2 reels. They let me take 5 Deadly Venoms and 36 Chamber of Shaolin, and I went to all these conventions and I showed those. And so I had a special thing then. So I was doing all that sort of stuff. But the big trick, so the bottom line was that they were able to send me to Hong Kong. Not only were they able to send me to Hong Kong, but they were able to arrange an introduction to Jackie Chan. And what happened, what I discovered in Hong Kong is, since I went over there at the behest of Ocean Shores, so the head of Ocean Shores, they all had this attitude about Americans. The first thing I do whenever I go to a foreign country is find out what they call me behind my back. And what they call white people in Hong Kong at that time, and I think to the degree still do, was Guaylo. Or Guaylo. Yeah. And so I sort of went, okay. And then I said, what's the Chinese word? In this case, it was Cantonese, because this was before China took Hong Kong back. I said, what's the Cantonese word for hairy? Because I came with this thing. And when you come, this is my ticket to ride throughout Asia. At least it was back then. Everybody was like, oh, look at that. And the reaction to this beard in China back in the 80s and 90s was incredible. So I said, what's the Cantonese word for hairy? And it was Mo, M-O-E. So whenever they would ask me, what's your name? Round Eye or whatever, I'd go, Mo Guaylo. They would laugh. And I was in.
Guy.
Hairy foreign devil.
That's funny.
And also,
See, I love how you capitalized on being different.
of course, yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. Again, I always try to walk at least an inch in the other person's shoes. I knew what was happening, and I knew how, from the way they treated me, I knew how the Hong Kong are like the Taiwanese in that they have always been, except after 1997. Now they're part of China. When I first went to Taiwan, which is where I actually learned Kung Fu, because even in Hong Kong, they weren't teaching Kung Fu, because there's a reason the Chinese government has burned down the Shaolin Temple almost as often as interlopers, because the Chinese do not need a system, a self-improvement system that makes people think for themselves. They have 3 billion people to deal with, so they want a system like Wushu or whatever, where you just follow orders. And hundreds or thousands of you doing the exact same thing at the exact same time. Nobody in that group should be thinking for themselves. That's why, they didn't let Wu Jing make Wolf Warrior 3. The Chinese Film Bureau cut that in the nub. But in any case, so I'm in Hong Kong. They arrange Wang Long Wai, the greatest villain of Shaw Brothers. They arranged a tour of Shaw Brothers Studio. They arranged a tour of Golden Harvest Studios, and they introduced me to Jackie Chan. And I walk into the Jackie Chan's office, and he's having an argument with his producer. And he turns and he sees me, Mo Guai Lo, and he says, "You, come here." And I go over there, and he says to me, Who's the person who should direct me in an American film? And I said, "Well, you, of course." And then he takes me by the shoulder. He brings me over to his producer, points at me, and he points at his producer and goes, "Tell him that." So I was friends with Jackie Chan. And
what was he like?
Jackie Chan, again, if you do any, psychological thinking about the nature, Jackie is exactly who you think. If you see Jackie's movies, you know who Jackie Chan is, which is, he was known back in the day as Double Boy. And even when he was working with Bruce Lee on Bruce Lee's movies, because as you recall, Bruce Lee broke Jackie Chan's neck in Enter the Dragon. So they worked, and Jackie had a wonderful story about what happened after that. The day that Jackie invited Bruce Haas to go out to go bowling, because Jackie was with all the stuntmen, and they all idolized Bruce. Idolized to the point, and some of them, of course, goes, "Oh, I hate Bruce, and I want to defeat him." But that's part of the idolization of somebody who is insecure. So nobody would approach Bruce. Nobody would approach Bruce. But at the end of every day, all the stuntmen would go out bowling. They would all go out bowling, and so we're going out bowling. So Jackie, being Jackie, because here's the deal: I think of Bruce Lee as Kung Fu Jesus, because he said one thing that is true, and had he lived, Kung Fu and martial arts as we know it would be completely different. Unfortunately, he died, so he wasn't able to make the because he would have forced the transition on anybody. All his films would have reflected. You saw how far he went with 3 films. Imagine what he could have done with 20. And so what he said, the thing that I distilled from his teaching, because the movies were entertainments. I didn't distill anything from that, because again, he was hurting others and he was hurting himself in those movies. And that's what he taught me, that Kung Fu could hurt, depending on how you did it. But in all his written teaching, and I've talked to a lot of his students off of the films, was always learn everything you can from everyone and everything you can, then make it your own. That is Jeet Kune Do. But guess what happened? The same thing that happened to real martial arts happened to the movies as well. They did what I call the Life of Brian de Bruce. Remember Life of Brian? Think for yourselves. Yes, Brian, we will think for ourselves. So what happened was that they saw what Bruce did. They either intrinsically or realized that they couldn't do. They felt that Bruce was just one of a kind. And we couldn't do what Bruce did. So we're just going to copy him. That's all we're going to do. What does he do? Look at his face. Look at his fists. Look at his noise. Listen to his noises. We're going to do that. And this, I have this discussion now. Just the other day, I had this discussion again with people who are trying to say Warrior was a great TV show. And I said, it's a Bruce in aspect TV show. Aspect, which is he's frozen. He is frozen back in 1973. There's only one person who took his teaching. Not even Donnie Yen took his teaching. Jackie Chan took his teaching. And that's why Jackie Chan is as huge as he is, because he learned everything he could from everyone he could and everything he could, and he made it his own. That's why he's so huge. That's why he uses everything in the scene. That's why he's not trying to fight. He's not trying to hit people, trying to avoid hitting people. But that's not badass enough for Westerners. So it's all mine. Thank you. And that's one of those things that another thing that Chi is, basically the Kung Fu force. In Star Wars, it's the force. In Kung Fu, it's Chi. It's Tai Chi. It's Qi Gong. And that's based on energy. And what you learn, what I've learned, I won't say what you learn. I don't know what other people learn. All I know is what I learn. All I know is what I think. I don't know what anybody else's thinks. I only know what I think. And I have oh-ho. One human's opinion. Basically, you say anything to me, I go, okay, oh-ho. Anyway, Chi is the power that, in other words, you'll notice, even if you had a shot of me that showed my entire body, you'll notice I'm not plugged into the wall. Where am I getting the energy to do this? Where am I getting the energy to think? Where am I getting, the energy to do anything? It's from something we are calling, or I am calling, Chi, which is what I've been taught by my teachers. And it is as real as anything I've ever experienced. In other words, I've seen people do what Poe did. Of course, they didn't crash into a building that's still a cartoon, but they did go all the way across the room. And I did that once. And it was just like, and I did the same thing that Poe did, which was like, what the F? Because if you do it right, it's just like when I was a kid. I realized that was connected up. You don't feel it. In other words, I was at the Tai Chi Alchemy, which has been going on for like 30 years in Sedona, Arizona. The great Rick Barrett, the best Tai Chi teacher that I know. We had an exercise where we were paired up, and one person's job was to raise their hands in the first move of a Tai Chi form, which is where you raise your wrists. You don't raise your arms, you raise your wrists. And the other person's job was to keep you from raising your wrists. And so I was paired up with a 25-year-old, 6'5", 250-pound football player. I don't know why it turned out that way. It just turned out that way. Actually, no, I think I gave them little hints. And so our job was to, so he stood there, he grabbed my wrists, he anchored himself, and he held my wrist down at my sides. And I said, all right. And I closed my eyes, and I already knew what my job was. My job was to raise my arms without using my muscles. Because every time you use your muscles, you degenerate them slightly. Muscles, when you get to my age, the use of your muscles start talking back. So my job was to raise my wrist using only my energy, only my internal energy. And I found out very quickly that it's not internal, just internal. It's internal and external. It's all around. And you can bring it in. You can bring in yin energy. You can bring out yang energy. You can do it all. And I've done it all. I'm still doing it all every morning. So in any case, so I'm there with my eyes closed. I try to raise my wrist. No, use my muscles. Do it again. And I still use my muscles. And then I did. I've been able to do this twice. And once in Taiwan. And I discovered what Bruce meant by saying, be water, my friend.
Ooh.
I became water officially once. and that was at a that was at a tea house in Taipei, Taiwan, which I maintain is still the only place you can actually get undiluted, unpolluted Kung Fu teaching. I went to work for, I think, 29 years or something as the entertainment editor at Inside Kung Fu magazine. And because Taiwan is also under the thumb of China, the first thing they showed me when I got to Taiwan was we went to the end of the island, and they had those little things, those little telescope things, except you didn't have to pay money for them. And you open it up, and you could see the missiles that China was aiming at Taiwan across the bay. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. And oh, yeah. So again, Taiwan invited all the great martial art journalists from all over the world to come to Taiwan because they knew that this was their only chance to get good tourism, because China is always trying to keep them from, being known to the world. So they invited me. And by then, I had been trying to learn Kung Fu in America since 1978. And so this was 2001. And at that time, I just had thrown up my hands. I couldn't find anybody who would teach me Kung Fu. They were all teaching me martial arts called CUMFOO or whatever. Or they would say it was Kung Fu, but it wasn't. It wasn't at least it wasn't the one I was looking for. And so I go to Taiwan, and the whole idea is that they put me on a 3-week trip where I got to meet every single Kung Fu teacher in Taiwan, not just Taipei, the entire island. And the second one they introduced me to was a guy because he's my glorious teacher, and I love him very much, literally. But I meet him. He teaches me more, because other Kung Fu people told me this would happen, and I didn't believe them. He taught me more in 20 minutes than I had learned in the last 24 years.
Wow.
Everything the jiu-jitsu guys taught me was about fighting and being combative and hurting yourself and in quotes, defending yourself against others, which was really offensive against them. And it was like, this guy taught me more in 20 minutes. Also, hilariously, he taught me what was called the foundational Qigong exercise called Peng Shui. And it was ridiculously easy and so simple. And if you feel any pain at all, you're not doing it right. And in fact, if you're not smiling, you're not doing it right. And so so even me then, the first time I met him, he taught me this exercise. And I said, oh yeah, this can't be what he says it's going to be. And then I became Santa for the first time at a mall. I was at the Danbury Mall in 2005. And it was wonderful. And the elves were great and the kids were great. However, I got sick 6 times in 6 weeks. Because of course, little children are germ bombs.
Yep.
And I tried everything. Nothing worked. And I said, well, I should try that Peng Shui thing. So I tried the Peng Shui thing. Guess what? I've been Santa ever since.
Kung Fu Santa.
And Kung Fu Santa. And I haven't been sick once. Because what Peng Shui does, why it's foundational, it is the ultimate energy-based. It's not even an exercise. It's something you do. And he introduced me to other Qigong teachers. And again, I was not interested in learning, by the time you learn Kung Fu, and as I discovered when the bully in 5th grade, I already knew how to protect myself. I didn't need to learn how to protect myself. I knew how to do that. Now I needed to learn how to make myself healthy, to remain healthy. Because the bottom line is you're not going to win, which is why I never try to win. My whole martial art approach is it's not about winning, because when you win, you don't always learn. But if you learn, you always win.
Ooh, I like that. Oh my God, we could talk all day. We're going to have you back on the show. But before we go, so you've worked with Disney, Nickelodeon.
Yeah, what happened was that because then once I did Inside Kung Fu and once I met Tai Seng video, and we started selling their stuff. By then, because I was in the comic industry, I was there at the beginning of the San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah.
So I said to Tai Seng, we should promote these things here, because I was always promoting stuff that I love, because that's basically the way I love something and I want to share it with others. A lot of writers share what they hate. I share what I love. And so I love these movies. And that was the other point I wanted to make. You know, I had seen all these Shaw Brothers movies, all these great Kung Fu films, but I had seen them with martial art eyes. It wasn't until 2001 when I started learning actual Kung Fu from actual Kung Fu teachers that wasn't diluted and wasn't polluted. Then I watched those movies again. I went, oh my God. I realized that I looked at I used this metaphor, which was, I was like a Chinese author who wrote a book about baseball movies or about sport movies. They didn't really understand the sports. They just said, oh, look, they swing bats, they throw balls, they run, they catch pigstins. It was pretty to them, but they didn't understand what was behind it. That was the way I was with Kung Fu. I understood martial arts. That was easy. But the Kung Fu stuff that La Kala Young did, and Wu Jing did, and Jet Li did, and even Jackie Chan did, because Jackie progressed, unlike Bruce, and Bruce would have progressed. Bruce was progressing all the way until he died. And basically, we said he basically killed himself, but that's another thing. So that's what so then it was once the mind was open, because I still go to Tai Chi classes where we go into class and we do miracles, and then all the other students leave the class and they close the doors. You know, this isn't real life. And I'm going, yeah, it is, if you want it to be. And so I keep my mind as open as I can, because that's fun, that's exciting, that's powerful, that's great. Ask me if you ask me what my favorite food is, what my favorite book is, what my favorite movie is, what my favorite person is, whatever my favorite clothes are, my answer is always the same. Great.
What?
Great.
Great?
My favorite food is great food. My favorite book is a great book. My favorite movie is a great movie. That way I don't have to choose one. I like all the great ones. I even like the terrible ones now, because I do reviews for them on YouTube. So even a terrible one, I get to investigate why it's terrible.
So what's your YouTube channel, so we can let all the
on my YouTube channel? It's That Fat Samurai Guy's channel, and it's DJ Anubis's channel. Every month I've done the action film autopsy for years now.
Yeah,
and we just finished doing December's. But anyway, and also I always offer to teach Don't Hurt Yourself, and for free, and nobody takes me up on it. Not in America, they don't.
That's horrible, you know.
They want to be badass. More power to them. They want to be badass. Be badass. Again, I'd rather be great ass. And what's great about being a great ass is that everybody goes, "Yeah, Rick, you are a great ass. You're a big ass.
You're a great
blank.
ass.
You're a great ass blank."
So what's coming up for the future for you?
Oh, geez. More of the same. I mean, I thought every time I think I'm done, I do the television shows, I do the movies, I do the books. It turns out I'm not done. Recently, I ghostwrite a lot of books, and I can't tell you, but I did. There are 2 books on the bestseller list that I ghostwrote. So, but then again, as we all know, books and magazines and television are shrinking. So that's going to change. And that was another thing that I like doing, which is my friends who worked in the mystery field and the science fiction field, and I was a member of the Mystery Writers of America and the Science Fiction Writers of America. They say, "Oh, you'll never get any way the way you're doing. You've got to specialize. You've got to concentrate." And I've never done that. There was a great writer, a great award-winning writer named Donald Westlake, and he always did different kinds of things. And I said, "Why do you do that?" He says, "I want to do one of everything." And I went, "Great idea." But my trick is that he just did it in books and movies. He also was nominated for Oscars for some of the movies he wrote too. I want to do it with everything. I mean, when people say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I sort of go, everything. I want to do everything. What's your favorite Kung Fu? All of them. Who's your favorite doctor? The Doctor Who? All of them. I'm an and guy. I'm not an or guy, because again, I know the end of the story. So the trick is, whatever it is, when I originally wanted to die the way Spock died, heroically, giving up his life for others. And then I went, oh, no, fuck that. I want to die the way Kirk died. Do you remember what Kirk said when he died?
No.
That was fun.
He goes, oh, no.
No, he said that was fun.
Yeah.
And anybody who actually died...
As he fell off the thing.
No, he died in Jean-Luc Picard's arms.
Yeah.
It was in the follow-up. That was fun.
My favorite was Galaxy. One of my favorite all time was that spoof Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, what's a great movie. Yeah.
That was a great
Alan.
Great movie.
Great everything. What's my favorite food? Great food. Because, by the way, I've had Chinese food. I've had great Chinese food. I've had terrible Chinese food. So I want great. And again, if you want real Chinese food, guess where you go? You go to Taiwan. Because again, it's not diluted. It's not corrupted. There's no. I mean, I was in Hong Kong many times, and I went back to actually work with Jackie Chan in 2001, and that was after China took over. And I went to all the old places that I used to love that had all the great Chinese food. And my review of every single meal I had for the 3 weeks I was there was, you can taste the chef's tears. Because they weren't happy campers anymore. That's what happens when you take freedom away from people.
Yeah.
So, go to Taiwan while you can, before China takes that over, too.
People always ask me, because I was originally from New York, a Long Islander, and they'd say, so here in Illinois, they go like, oh, well, so where can you get good Chinese food in New York? I go, throw a rock. But I mean, like, where can't you get good Chinese food? You can go
I disagree with that. Once I found out what great Chinese food really was, when I went back to New York, I sort of went, oh.
I totally understand where you're coming from, and that is a fair statement.
It is good, though.
But when you grow up in a particular place,
and you don't know any better,
and you don't know any better, and then you move somewhere else, and you go, this tastes funny. I came here to Illinois, and what I never knew for a long time is that they use a certain amount of peanut butter in making egg rolls. But the problem is, like, here in Illinois, they abuse the privilege. So when I eat the egg rolls, I'm like, what is this? What did you do to my egg?
Not all peanut butters are the same. Every single one is different. If you make your own peanut butter, then you can control it. But that's true. That's the other thing that I discovered when in Chinese food, I would have the Chinese food in New York, and I was not liking it. And then I had a dear writer friend in Connecticut, the wilds of Connecticut, and he was a connoisseur of food. He brought me to a Chinese place, and it was really good. And I said, so I was talking to the owners. They said, we used to have a restaurant in Chinatown, New York, but we couldn't make really great food because of the triad. Because the triad took so much money from them every week or month that they couldn't afford the right stuff. So when they moved to Connecticut, there were no triad anymore. So they were able to get good products. And the other thing I always remember, because I've had, of course, a lot of Italian food in America, but then I went to Italy. And then I discovered the trick was...
The whole other thing.
And the reason why, because the chef told me, because I'm always interested. Doesn't seem that way now because I talk so much, but sometimes I actually listen. In any case, I would talk to the chefs, and he said, what you have to remember is air, ground, water.
And see, you just said you just went where I was going to go. It is very, very funny that the water, right? And I wasn't, like I always said this about New York and here, and the water's different. But recently, this is very funny. Recently, whenever there's a place here in Illinois that calls themselves New York, blah, 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 whatever it is, I go, I walk in there on the biggest credit because I'm like, yeah, I'm from New York, so impress me, right?
I've drunk the water there. I've had the water in New York.
Well, but the thing is something magical about that water because, there's something magical about that water because the fact is there is a place out here called Little Pop's New York Pizza, And one of my students says, "Oh, you got to go there. It's just like home." And I'm like, "I don't know." He goes, "No, come on, let's go." So we go. I sit down. We feast upon the pizza, and my mind is blown. It's just like home. So I call the owner over like a big shot. I go, "Yeah, I got to talk to you." Guy comes over, and I go, "Okay, so what's the gag? How come? What'd you do? Order this stuff, freeze it, and bring it here from New York?" He says, "No, no, no." He says, "What I did was I bought a special machine that changes the pH in my water so it matches the water from New York." I went, "Aha! See, I knew it was a trick to that." And it is about the water. Chinese food, pizza, and bagels, my trifecta of wonderful foods that all are based on water.
And here's the deal, my friend. I'm going to teach you your first lesson in Don't Hurt Yourself, which is...
Please do. Please do.
It's not a trick. It's a truth. It's a truth. And what happened? You learned something.
Okay.
You learned not the trick. You learned the truth.
Yeah, Chen.
My job.
Well, since we are an Allan Goldberg production, how did you meet Allan?
Oh yeah, let's hear that one.
I do know he invited me. I turned into, through no fault of my own, the person to go to for promotion. I was the contributing editor for Inside Kung Fu magazine. And that is, if you wanted to get into Inside Kung Fu magazine and you lived in the Northeast, you come to me. Because I was the only game in town. I wasn't black belt. Black belt also, I believe, had offices out on the West Coast. My reputation was I wasn't going to ask for what's the word, 30 coins of silver. I was going to go, you got something cool? Let me tell everybody about it. I want to do it. So I believe, I'm trying to remember where I met Fu Goldberg, but always liked him. It wasn't at the Urban Action Showcase. I can't remember the first of his shows that I went to, but however it happened, somebody said, I knew his was the biggest game in town. And I was at somebody's school or whatever. You'd have to ask him. I don't know if he remembers, because it's been decades and decades.
Yeah,
well, when it comes to martial arts, Allan is like, when it comes to martial arts, Allan's like, where's Waldo? He just
yeah. He's there, and he dresses so well. I love the guy.
He does.
Yeah.
And he was always.
I always wanted to give me his leftovers. I want him to hand me down me.
That would be good. But yeah,
he tells me he will.
He always. I was willing to pay. Inside Kung Fu would help, and he said, "No, you come." He gave me a room. He always let me come to the dinners, and that was another sight I'll never forget. In addition to his kindness, and of course, I had already met many of the people who were at his events, so I was able to continue that. But the last time I was able to go, I had already gone on a better diet, and I hadn't had sugar or desserts but because of my deprived childhood, my mother canceled birthdays and Christmas when I was 12 years old. So now if you give me anything like presents or food, I go crazy. I was like, yeah, give it to me. So he invites me to the dinner. He had 3 tables of desserts, all different. All 3 tables were different. And so, Rick, no. I'll just have a little bite. Just have a little bite.
Yeah.
It's the best food ever.
Yeah, but still, my body was no longer used to it. And so I could feel the sugar going after me. And I had a bit of everything. And across the table was Eric Lee. Have you had Eric Lee? Yeah. Eric and I had been friends for a long time. And Eric looked at me from across the table. He knew what my problem was. And then he started doing this from across the table. And then he started smiling, because once he started doing this, I started doing this. Because do you know what he was doing?
His energy.
He was showering me with healthful energy. And the reason I smiled is I felt it, and then he started smiling because he saw that I felt it. He saw that I was accepting it, because he told me that afterwards, and I already knew the truth, which was, I'm sure he did that. I bet he did that to everybody who needed it, but virtually nobody reacted to it because they didn't accept it.
You see, what's interesting, and again, I know that you've been around a long time, longer than I.
Yeah, it's true.
So no. I mean, as a compliment. And I don't want to sound like I'm mansplaining, but I want to share with you my feeling about that. And that is that I've always said is I could teach anybody to ball the hand up in the fist like this and hurt somebody. Do that, nobody's happy. But truly in the martial arts, what a great gift it is that from a distance, over many, many miles, I can say, oh my God, Rick, you look just glowing and wonderful and right? And now I touched your life, made you feel good, and I didn't even have to make a fist. That is good martial arts. And I think you can agree with that.
Nope. If you're going to call it martial arts, I have to disagree with that. Arts is correct. Okay. Martial is not.
No, that's true, because it is not military way. But it is a generic term that I use.
I understand that. But I assure you, and try to learn from this, you are using it incorrectly, just like you use the word trick. So find another word.
We do that as Americans. We bastardize stuff in the martial arts community.
That's another lesson that I need to teach you right now. There are 300 million Americans. You don't know all of them. In fact, you know only one, and that's you. So, if you speak, the moment, one human's opinion, the moment anyone speaks for anyone other than themselves to me, you've lost me. Because I don't mind, again, one human's opinion, but I don't believe you. I'm not going to say okay. I'm going to say Understand the fact of the matter is, this is a biological scientific fact. The only mind you can read is your own. The only opinion you can truly have is your own. So if you tell me what you think, I will be able to believe it, because I'll say, that's what Ross thinks. They should explore this up here rather than depending on what the internet. Oh my God, if you're going to depend on what the internet says, you are truly lost. Yeah.
No, wait, but see, if I read your book and I'm on an interview and I start talking about your book, is that fall under the same umbrella of, I don't know?
If you tell me what you think of my book, then that's what your thought of my book was. But also, I've made mistakes in my book. I mean, my first book, Martial Art Movies, has mistakes in it. Matter of fact, I get roasted regularly about the mistakes that I have in it. But that was the information I was getting at that time before anybody knew anything. Now everybody knows everything, apparently.
And we're only humans, so we make mistakes.
Exactly. So what I'm asking you to do as a kung fu teacher, what I'm asking you to do, because it'll be helpful to you and it'll certainly be helpful to me, is to learn from those mistakes. Do not repeat them. Now that, accept that you have made a mistake, attempt not to repeat it, accept the truth of what I'm saying, because you have to admit, or you don't have to, but I think it would be better for you if you did admit that the only mind you can read is your own.
I certainly can't read other people's minds. I don't have that. I'm not Professor X.
No one can. And it only works.
You guys lost me a while ago. I'm just enjoying the banter. We got some good drama on the show today.
This is mental martial arts.
I assure you that Rick and I have no issue with each other. We're just verbally playing with each other.
It's just, from now on, understand something, that when we talk the next time, and if you would do it again, understand that I'll turn off.
I don't even understand what he did.
What he did was he spoke for other people. He was telling me what other people thought.
He's saying that when I'm approaching a subject and speaking on a matter, like I was talking about titles or people's attitudes or whatever it is, when I'm saying people say this or people are doing that, what he's trying to tell me is it's important to consider that I say that I say, it's my point of view that I believe I see this and I feel this because I'm expressing how I feel and how I see it. Not to say this is the way the world is, period.
Okay.
Am I
That
right?
makes sense. But we're going to have a whole class. The Worry Alliance. If you get on a Zoom, we'll come. I would love to learn a little bit of your...
This is mental martial arts. This is mental martial arts.
It is important because it does change the way you present yourself to other people, and making your message palatable is very important. Otherwise, nobody learns anything. So
wait a minute, is it palatable or powerful? What did you say? Palatable or powerful?
I said palatable.
Well, palatable is good. But this is why I have no students. Because I do this. It's kind of like people are going, oh, no. I'd rather learn to fight than to talk to him again.
No, but you see, learning is not where you pick just one person to learn from. You can learn from many different people.
What did Bruce Lee say? Learn everything you can from everyone you can and everything you can.
Well, I think it's good to debate sometimes because that's how you learn,
Well, I don't even consider it a debate. I'm just saying that you say that to me, I won't believe you, and there's no point to go on. Peddle your wares elsewhere because I'm not buying them. And you should know. Don't waste your time trying to sell those particular wares to me because I will just sort of go. I'm going
to do that when he likes to do this one. Tom Getling says, so I'm going to start going.
Well, that may be true if Tom actually said it.
Yeah, I love Tom Getling, but I'm just saying that it's like his second word. Oh, Tom Getling, like I say, Allan Goldberg, Rob Zabilski.
Ross, that's another thing. If you tell me what a specific someone else says, then I will accept that. If you just say, if it's just generic, you don't name anybody. Because usually what happens when I have this discussion with other people and they'll say, I'll say name two.
Oh, something, Rick, I'm going to give you that one big time.
Thank you.
But I am going to give you that because I also cannot stand when people say, well, people have said, and I'm like, yeah, who? Tell me who. You got these people behind you. Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
This was great. But we have one more thing. We have the signature question.
Oh, yes, my signature question. All right, So can Ric Meyers tell us something about Ric Meyers that most people don't know about Ric Meyers?
Well, I can tell you something that Ross Greenberg doesn't know about Ric Meyers.
Meyers?
Yes. My name is Rick. You said it 3 times incorrectly. My name is Ric Meyers.
Ric Meyers.
S on the end.
Actually, that was probably my fault because
That's okay.
I'll have to go find Ric Meyers and see what his answer is. But
that's okay. I've had people call me Ross. Funny. I've had people call me Ross Goldberg. I'm like, no.
There you go. See, you know what it feels like.
But that's not an insult either.
Ask again.
What signature question does Ross and KJ not know about you?
Tell us something about Ric Meyers that most people don't know about Ric Meyers.
Well, that's a tough one because, as you can tell, I don't shut up. And to know me is to know everything about me.
But is there something maybe that you haven't shared that would be special to our show that we would know? We've had some of our guests tell us things like, well, actually, big burly kickboxer, and he goes, I like knitting. We're like, what? So they come up with these really wild things that they never told anybody. And we love it because then it's on our site for all.
Well, it's a secret about you.
And I've said this for many years, and it's always been true. My life is an open book, and I've written more than 75 of them, and I've done 50 DVDs. So I don't keep secrets.
And you've written for all the pretty much major era. Even Nickelodeon.
Well, not all the majors, but some. Again, I'm isolated. I'm trying to think if there's anything.
Yeah, that's fake news I just said. Because I did not know what I was talking about.
That's
so
right.
Learning.
You were guessing. You were guessing. Let's see. Yeah, no, there's nothing. Geez.
You never know how you touch lives with people when you teach them something.
And, well, you do occasionally. It's funny because after all these years of writing, I will, thanks to the internet, I will get not email. I will get texts and posts from people who say, I read your book. I found out. As far as I'm concerned, I spent most of my life alone in a room typing. That's what I did, and I decided to make it enormous amounts of fun, like playing. I play every day. And I also have done many, many other jobs. Let me see. Are there any jobs that I've had that no one else knows about? Not really. I mean, I was the staff writer for America's leading fine art publisher, but that's no big deal.
Rick, are you married?
To you, no
I
big
was
deal.
married.
But to the common people,
I was married once, and recently, a matter of fact, you can go to my Facebook page. And I revealed my father was born on December 24th, so he never got really good gifts because it was so close to Christmas. So I have a picture of him at my wedding with my wife. I'm not married now. And so I put that up on my post on December 24th, wishing my dad
Ric
a happy birthday.
Myers.
Ric Meyers, R-I-C, no K, M-E-Y-E-R-S. And of course, the story for my father was there's no K on Richard, so that's why I didn't put a K on your.
I assure you that
like the way your name is spelled.
I assure you for the rest of our friendship that I will not put a K and I'll remember the S. How's that?
Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
No, you have my word. You have my word, and I keep my word.
Yeah, Ross is pretty good.
Let me tell you something. Here's something you may not know, but I've told this to everybody too. I have stopped trusting people decades ago. And why did I stop trusting people? You could probably guess why I stopped trusting people. Because I betrayed myself. I learned that I couldn't trust myself. So I said,
the worst is when
I'm not going to treat anybody any different than the way I also, in addition to Bruce Lee, idolizing and devoted to Bruce Lee, I'm devoted to Jesus Christ. In that Jesus Christ said, treat others the way you wish to be treated. And, I think as far as I'm concerned, that's simple. So when I found out I couldn't trust me, I went, I'm not going to put, I think of trust as a weight that I put on other people. So now you have kindly taken that weight and put it on yourself. But understand from my point of view, whether, because habits are hard to break. And there's no reason I think on the basis of this experience, that, when I think of you from every time in the future, I'll be going, I like that guy. I like that guy. That guy's okay. So I'm not going to hold you to that, because if you make a mistake, and remember, what's my Kung Fu called? Don't hurt yourself. So if you do screw up, I'll point it out, but I'll be with a smile, and I will. And the one thing I will not want you to do is to beat yourself up about it. So why put you in a position where you have to beat yourself up about it if you don't? And it's an easy mistake.
Because worry is what you harm yourself when you.
Yeah, don't harm yourself. So don't force me to accept a promise that I don't have to take. It's not important to me that you gave me a promise not to do something. If you don't do it, great. If you do it, it's still great because I still think you're great.
Okay.
I love that.
He forgot the S. I hate him from now on. I will never trust him again. Well, I got news for you. I never trusted you in the first place because I never trusted me. I put faith in people until they prove me otherwise, and then all I do.
My tagline is: you got to be careful who you help. Because I've found out the hard way when you help someone when they're not who they say they are. And that shatters your trust, because that's when
That's right, and you never get that back.
That was the hardest lesson I ever learned, because I used to be very trusting until that situation.
So I hope you've learned from it now.
Oh, trust me, I did.
The non-trust guy that put the X through the trust. I mean, I actually blame you for that.
Yeah.
Because if you hadn't trusted them, you wouldn't have set yourself up.
Well, if I would have trusted my instincts of the red flags,
I will tell you something that some people know, but not a lot of people know. When I started writing, I was originally a nonfiction writer, and I was a reporter for the Village Voice, and I would interview serial rapists and serial killers. And I learned very quickly something that everybody should know, is that bad people. Well, actually, let me separate that. I make a separation between bad and evil.
Yeah, yes.
We're all good and bad. Evil people look for you, KJ. They're looking for you.
True evil. This was a true evil, and I just did not. I'm so nice, and I take, but now
you don't have to be stupid, and you can be nice without being stupid.
No, I was stupid.
There you go. So
I admit, and it cost me dearly. But the best thing about it is I learned from it, and I've come back bigger and better. And the things I'm doing now are part of it was because of making that mistake that I fought hard when somebody was trying to beat me down.
Yeah.
And
literally or figuratively or both?
No, not figuratively.
Yeah, because I've dealt with a lot of literally too.
Yeah. Well, trust me, I'm sure if they had me in a room, it would be literally. Because when you bust somebody's who they are or who they're trying to lie about, and then all of a sudden you realize like this person knows the truth, you're gonna hate that predator will hate you till they die, and they will, that's just how it goes. And part of understanding is you'll never understand it.
Well, I do not feel that is true. They do not. What did you call them? A psychopath? What did you call them?
A predator.
A predator. Predators can't hate others because all their hatred is self-hatred directed outward. So yeah.
And that's why they lie and make up stories about...
They don't see you as a human being. They see you as another victim. They need to... The way they've been victimized, they victimize others. That's why you need to break the cycle.
Yeah.
That's why some predators break out of it, but a lot of them don't, because they have learned that love is hate. And that hate is
this
love.
one won't,
Well, hasn't. I never say never. But
you never know. I mean, the dude actually could be a great person if he just didn't lie about himself all the time.
However, you already learned the lesson with him, so it doesn't matter whether he gets better. It's important that you always protect yourself from him.
Yeah. Furthest away, the better.
There you go.
Yes. Bye. Talk to the hand.
The
best revenge,
the miles between the hands
is success. You know what I mean? You just keep going. It's just a bump, and you keep going, and you don't let people, because no matter where you go, there's always somebody that's trying to do something, and
more than somebody. Usually, I find it's 75-25.
Yeah, Ross and I, we know. I mean, because we're big partners and things are going great. We're at like 27,000 almost on our YouTube channel, and it's the things people that they start wanting to put a dive and pitch you against and hope they could say something or and that's one thing we've talked about is that we will stay true to
over
honor.
80,000 views already. It's unbelievable.
I've found that people who can't control themselves seek to control others.
Yep.
And oh well.
And on that note,
that's why Kung Fu is good. Don't hurt yourself.
Check out Ric Meyers on Amazon. Go to his Facebook. The guy he sells out Comic Cons. Everybody's a Comic Con favorite. Rick and I are actually going to be working on a Comic Con type of stuff. Hopefully in the future, we're in negotiation. So I'm excited about that. Maybe a channel.
Yeah, we're doing our 28th San Diego Comic Con Kung Fu Extravaganza next July. And talk to Sifu Goldberg. If he wants to give me a ride, I'll show up.
I will, because it would be great to have you. So on that note, Ross, you want to sign us off?
Well, I want to thank all of our family, friends, and fans for coming to another episode of Action Martial Arts Magazine TV. We were blessed with having our friend Ric Meyers on the show today, and we hope to see him at the Action Martial Arts Magazine event this January 31st. Make sure to be there in Atlantic City. This has been an Allan Goldberg production.